Well, hello, Mr. Itamar Marcus of Palestinian Media Watch in Israel. Welcome to my show.
Oh, thank you very much, Pastor, for inviting me.
I've heard a lot about you through the years, and just tell me briefly about your background.
When the Oslo Accords happened, and I realized, as many in Israel realized at the time, that this was a disaster. We were inviting terrorists into our midst, and there was no reason to believe that Yasser Arafat was no longer a terrorist. Soon afterwards, established the Palestinian Media Watch. I said, the way we can find out what they mean and what they're going for and what their targets are is by listening to them, following their activities, reading their school books, um, following what they do in summer camps. And this is what we've done. We really studied the Palestinian Authority from every different angle. And what we know about them, we know them inside and out. Uh, and we know there are two different worlds. There's the English language world that they present in Oslo when they want to be accepted as supposed peace people, and to their own people. It's a completely different message. It's one fundamentally hatred of Jews, anti-Semitic, and I can describe this later, fundamentally denying Israel's right to exist, as well as promising the destruction of Israel. And let me introduce by saying even one more thing, which is very significant. A lot of people will recognize that the Palestinian Authority doesn't recognize Israel's right to exist, but they go even further. They don't recognize Jews' right to exist.
Yeah.
Anti-Semitism is so fundamental. We have heard 5 times in the last months, uh, preachers, including Sharia judges, official Palestinian Authority television, which is controlled by the PA. 5 times in the last month, we have heard the following prayer as part of the official sermons on Friday. Count the Jews one by one, kill them one by one, don't leave even one. So this is part of the literally genocidal message, so that whereas the world says, okay, they accept the Palestinians don't accept Israel's right to exist, they don't accept the Jews' right to exist either. And they tell their people that the end of time is contingent on the extermination of the Jews. In fact, the language that the preachers chose to repeat this last year, I think is very important because uh, for many years they've been talking about a global message that Jews are going to be, that the resurrection is contingent on the extermination of Jews. Um, that's very big, but individual Palestinians can kill one Jew, can kill two Jews. And I think that's why they're saying count the Jews one by one, kill them one by one. They're giving a message to Palestinians. Don't think you can't help in this cause. You can kill them one by one. And I think that's the message of the Palestinian Authority. People, and the world has to recognize what we're dealing with the Palestinian Authority.
I heard you speak at the Christian Media Summit in December of 2022 in Jerusalem, the government's media summit. And during that summit, we were actually taken to one of the kibbutzes by the Gaza border and met some heroic Jews who were working for peace with the Palestinian side and gave some pretty beautiful stories about that. And then come 9 months later, and these same people come to slaughter the Jews of the kibbutzes. Isn't that a terrible reality?
Yes, they literally were killing the people that were helping them. There was one woman who made, she was retired and she made it her job to, when Palestinians needed hospital care and they got the permit to come into Israel, she would drive them to Tel Aviv to the hospital. She would drive them for medical care. And she was one of the people who was murdered. Um, there's another woman who was not murdered, who was interviewed, who described how there was a Palestinian who worked in her home, and she knew him, and she gave him coffee, and when October 7th started, she ran away from her house, and then I forget now how, but she found out that he was in her house looking for her,
Wow.
literally trying to kill her. The same person who she had, and she escaped, and she told the story afterward. So it was a tragic, tragic rude awakening for those people who had been deceived by the Palestinian population. A number of years ago, together with my colleague at Palestinian Media Watch, we wrote a book that's Nan Jack Zilberdick, who is Danish, by the way, um, Scandinavian. And the title of the book we gave Deception, because that's what's been happening since the signing of the Oslo Accords. Two different messages to their own people. It's a message of Jews don't have a right to exist. Israel doesn't have a right to exist. People who kill Jews are the ultimate heroes. They get rewarded. We name schools after them, name streets after them, put monuments in their name. It's a whole world of terror. And then they get on the plane, fly off to Oslo or to Washington or to Brussels, and all of a sudden they're peacemakers. Oh, we just want peace. So it's a big world of deception. And what I'm convinced of by now is that there, on the part of these Western countries, there's a lot of self-deception. Everything was there. I can't tell you how many times I've met with Norwegian foreign ministry people, showed them all the documentation, not the way I'm summarizing it now, but showed them the videos where they call for the genocide, showed them the videos where children are brought up with hatred, showed them the examples from the Palestinian school books that can be not interpreted in any which way. And they know it. So they've known it. So they what they've done is they've tried to excuse it. Oh, that's because Israel did this. That's because Israel did that. But it's all self-deception, and it's tragic because it's not been good for Israelis. Obviously, we've had really close to 3,500 people, and if we include soldiers, probably 4,000 people killed since the Oslo Accords as a result of the Oslo Accords. This was supposed to bring peace, and it opened the floodgates of terror. So it's been tragic, and it's been the self-deception that's enabled this to continue. It's been the self-deception by the Western leaders that has enabled this to continue.
You know, back in 1993, I hosted the American televangelist Pat Robertson, who had been one of the presidential candidates a few years before, and we were up in his private plane, and then he suddenly gets a radio call from America telling about this new accord, and he immediately he started stuttering, and he told me, "This cannot happen because it's totally against the Bible. We cannot give up land for peace." And then I suddenly realized, but you were telling me that the Oslo Accords was really a wake-up call for you in some ways. Is that correct?
Yes, because I realized right away that it wasn't honest. We saw from the statements from the Palestinian leaders right away there were things that were exposed. For example, within weeks after the signing of the Oslo Accords, Yasser Arafat was in South Africa, and he spoke there, and he said that the Oslo, and he was speaking in a mosque to Muslims who were criticizing, how can you make peace with them, with the Jews? And he said, our peace deal is similar to the our peace deal is similar to the Hudaybiyah agreement that Muhammad signed with the Quraysh tribes of Mecca. And what was that deal? It was a 10-year peace deal. Muhammad had already conquered Medina. He had conquered actually 3 Jewish tribes and destroyed them in Medina. And then he was going back to Mecca. And Mecca was his goal because that was the religious center, and he wanted that to be his religious center, but he knew that he wasn't strong enough. So he made a 10-year deal. And then 2 years later, when he was strong enough, he went and he conquered Mecca. And here we have Yasser Arafat coming to Muslims and saying, don't worry, it's just like Muhammad's deal. It's just like the Hudaybiyah agreement signed in a place called Hudaybiyah. And that message was not just given to South Africans, it was given many times to the Palestinian population. I'll never forget a number of years ago when there was a new round of peace talks that was beginning. And there was a lot of opposition within Israel and a lot of opposition, of course, within the Palestinian Authority, especially from Hamas and others. And there was talk about there would be a year of peace talks, and in exchange for the peace talks, Israel was going to release a certain number of prisoners every 4 months. People who had been imprisoned for life, meaning all murderers, This was a gesture. In other words, even to get them to talk peace, we had to give away terrorist prisoners. People forget this. Not just Hamas that uses blackmail to get terrorists released. So we started releasing prisoners every 4 months. Um, but the first week after the peace talks started, Mahmoud Abbas's advisor on Islam, and at that time I think he might have also been the minister of religion, went on television on the official sermon and said, "Some of you are complaining about what's going on. Let's remember Muhammad's Hudaybiyah agreement."
Yeah.
He signed for 10 years. 2 years later, he conquered. And then he said the following: that's the model.
Yeah.
That's the model. I mean, what more do you need? And of course, we publicized it. We sent it around the world. Every diplomat should have known this. People in Washington, Oslo, everyone should know. He's telling his Palestinian population, this is temporary. That's the model.
Mm.
So why is anyone surprised when October 7th happens and the entire Palestinian population supported? I don't know if you know, everybody talks about the Palestinians. Well, there were polls done by two respected Palestinian organizations. The one that's the most shocking was taken a month and a half later, in the middle of November 2023, and they asked Palestinians, given what's happened since October 7th and everything happened since then, does it make you feel proud as a Palestinian? 98% said yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
98% of Palestinians were proud of October 7th and the aftermath. And then they were asked, was it the right decision? So here it went down a little bit. 83% said it was the right decision. October 7th was the right decision. Now, of course, why did it go down? Because it had already been a few months of Israel's counterattack. There'd been a lot of destruction in Gaza. Thousands of terrorists had been killed and a number of civilians as well. So they said it wasn't the right decision, but it made them proud. It made them proud. Nonetheless, it made them proud. And this didn't happen in a vacuum. This happened because the Palestinian Authority has been poisoning the minds of Palestinians since the Oslo Accords were established. There wasn't this kind of hatred before, and if you want, I can give you some of the proof about that. But it was the Oslo Accords, and it was Yasser Arafat being control of education, control of culture, control of media, control of sports, and he sent his hate messages through everything. Sporting events were named after mass murderers and terrorists. Schools were named after. Everything that they controlled. And to date, we have 98% of Palestinians who are proud of rape, beheading, burning families alive, wiping out full families, 1,200 people murdered. 98% are proud. They have destroyed not just the lives of thousands of innocent Israelis and tens of thousands of innocent Palestinians. They destroyed the minds of Palestinians.
As a proud Norwegian, I must say that I'm very ashamed of Norway's initiative that led to the Oslo Accords. So, along with other Norwegians, I want to say I'm sorry.
Well, certainly you personally don't bear the kind of responsibility, but the leadership, and even the leadership, I'm willing to say, okay, they made a mistake.
Yeah.
2 years later, they should have retracted. 3 years later, as soon as Yasser Arafat started what he called the Intifada, the terror war with suicide bombings and suicide bombers that lasted for 3 years, they should have retracted. They said, okay, we made a mistake. But instead, like a gambler who lost and realizes he's been betting on the wrong horse, but it's as crazy, he just keeps doubling down and betting more and more on the same horse. And that's what the Norwegian leaders did, and that's what many American leaders did, and most of the other European countries as well have been, because we live in democracies. So every once in a while we get a country that recognizes, a leadership that recognizes that it's wrong. But there always are enough countries that want to keep this false process going, that it has staggered along, just bring destruction to Israelis, destructions to Palestinians, and I'll use the expression again, poisoning the minds of Palestinians. I'll tell you why I use that expression. One of the reports we did on Palestinian school books, we did in 2007 when Hillary Clinton was a senator. And whenever we did reports of this scale, I'd like to release it with some significant political person, either in Europe, possibly in the EU, or with an American. And so we asked her, and she looked at it, she studied it, her staff studied it, and we had a press conference in the Senate. And Hillary Clinton said that the Palestinian media, because that of course showed her also the indoctrination of children to hatred and martyrdom in the media. She said the media and the school books together are profoundly poisoning the minds of the children. Profoundly poisoning the minds. Well, those children who were poisoned in 2007 through 2023 were the 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds, the 30-year-olds and the teenagers who went racing into Israel to rape and to kill and to murder. They were poisoned by their leadership unfortunately, with a lot of Norwegian money and a lot of European money and a lot of American money.
Yeah. In 1997, you founded and you have since led Palestinian Media Watch, and you have spoken to parliaments, to congresses, governments worldwide for these several decades. And you look sharp. I mean, you're 71, you told me, and you don't look like you're about to quit. So thank you for that. But you released some information that I snapped up a few days ago in Jerusalem Post. Before now, Mr. Abbas is planning to go to the UN to this peace, to this two-state solution conference under the auspices of UN. Tell me about that.
Well, the UN is having an event on June 17th, initially sponsored by France and Saudi Arabia, and now many countries, many Western countries have joined. Britain, Canada, a lot of them are even threatening to recognize a Palestinian state when they get there. Now, it's just shocking that all of the evidence about the Palestinian Authority literally defines them as a terror organization. Yeah. When you say that Israel has no right to exist, Jews have no right to exist, you preach for their murder, and then those people who do those murders are absolutely seen as Palestinian heroes. Not just seen, but stated by Mahmoud Abbas, the leader of the PA. He calls them, I'll just give you an example from a few months ago. There was talk about, he had said he was going to cut out money that they were paying monthly to terrorists in prison. He said he would do it from a new bank account. And he immediately got under pressure, and he went on TV and he spoke and he said, don't worry, we're not going to cut them down at all. They are talking about terrorists and prisoners, murderers, as well as martyrs who are suicide bombers, include suicide bombers. He said, they are more honorable than all of us. So you have the head of the Palestinian Authority, the one who is welcomed as a peacemaker so many times in European capitals. And he says that murderers and suicide bombers are the most honorable people among us. So, and now they're going to go and give this man a state and recognize a state. Again, it's surreal. It's Kafkaesque. It makes absolutely no sense. So is it just self-deception, or is there just a lot of hatred of Israel and maybe Jews right under the surface with a lot of these countries? I don't know. But it certainly is not an action of a rational leadership and a rational state.
You said to J Post, I think I'm quoting it correctly, that Israel ought to deny Abbas the right to leave the Israeli territory to go to this until he has retracted these statements.
Yes, because in addition to all of these things that I just described, just at the beginning of June 1st, his official newspaper published an interview with him. And the interviewer asked him, what do you think about October 7th? What's your response to it? So I just want to read some of the things that he said, because it's just shocking that this is Mahmoud Abbas. So he said, Hamas killed 1,200 Israelis, abducted 250. They took hostages. They shook the foundations of the Israeli entity. They exposed the Israelis as who had the reputation of being an invincible army. This was a glaring failure of the entity's security components and security forces. They failed to discover what Hamas was planning. And then at the end, what does he say? As important as the goals that Hamas attempted to achieve through the attack may have been, it's not comparable to the damage and heavy losses in the Gaza Strip. The important goals. He's describing all the devastation in Israel, the people murdered, the failures of Israel. He shook the foundations of this entity. Israel's an entity. They shook off. This is Mahmoud Abbas, and this is so. What I said to the Israeli government, and in the article, and also in talking to them, Israel should announce that they're not allowing a Palestinian Authority representative to leave Israel because they have to go through Israel, either Israel's airspace or through the land, the ground that's under Israel's control, to get out until Abbas retracts, until Abbas says, I condemn October 7th, I condemn the murders, I condemn the atrocities. No, here he is celebrating how Israel was embarrassed by them. He shouldn't be allowed to go out. And the importance is it will wake. I see it not just the action against him, but I want it to be a wake-up call for the world. Everyone, even France, which is sponsoring this, Macron visited Israel after October 7th. Everybody recognized the horrors. 1,200 murdered, the rapes. Everybody recognized it. And now they're doing this. Well, let them know that this event of October 7th, that they all condemned thoroughly, is being glorified by Mahmoud Abbas.
Do you think that Israel will actually deny him the right to leave?
I don't think so. There's Israel, there's a lot of international pressure from all of these countries, and I'm afraid we're going to just let him go there and walk in and come in as a hero, instead of walking in there degraded. He's going to walk in as a hero, a Palestinian hero, and be welcomed by countries like Norway, France, and others.
Wow. So serious. Now, if I may ask your view on this conference in New York in the United Nations, do you think that any of the Security Council members will actually vote for a two-statehood during that conference, or make a stand for that?
Well, as far as I know, there's no Security Council meeting scheduled as part of a conference, and most of the countries that are going to be there are not members of the Security Council.
Yeah.
It's declarative.
Yeah.
Basically, they're trying to warn Israel. They're trying to threaten Israel that we have very broad support for the creation of a Palestinian state. If you don't do the following X, Y, Z, if you don't even continue gambling with the lives of your people and the lives of Palestinians, if you don't do that, then we're going to unilaterally recognize the state. We're going to call for the UN. And of course, the UN Security Council is a viable threat for a couple of reasons. One, I mean, it's not because Donald Trump is not going to recognize a Palestinian state. He recognizes the dangers. He's not going to do it. But as we know, we all live in democracies, and we don't know who the next American president is going to be. If he's an Obama-like person, then you know that they would already, at some point would go along with that. There could be all sorts of irrational but dangerous demands on Israel. You must withdraw or else. There's the threats of sanctions, isolation. I mean, there's so many possible things that the Security Council could do. So that's why this is dangerous now. It's not going to happen now, but it could start a process. And that's why, before this process even starts, Mahmoud Abbas has to be exposed for exactly what he is, and Israel should be saying this over and over again. Look what Abbas is. He supports October 7th. He names schools after mass murderers like Dalal Mughrabi, who murdered 37 people in her bus hijacking, 12 of them children, and there are 5 schools named after Dalal Mughrabi. He personally sponsored a birthday party for her on the anniversary of her 50th birthday. I mean, this is not a peacekeeper. It's not a it's not a peacemaker. He's a terrorist. He is a terrorist. He supports terror. His organization, the Palestinian Authority that he said, is a terrorist, a partying terror organization. And the world should recognize that. The world doesn't recognize that. And we're walking into a bit of a storm, I fear.
You know, you are relentless. You're untiring. You have a strong voice, and I know even members of the Norwegian Parliament they readily quote you. I've heard in debates in the Norwegian Parliament direct quotes from you and from Palestinian Media Watch. So it's having an effect, and it's going all over Europe. And I believe what you're saying now through Jerusalem Post and other channels, and even here on this show, will reach out, and the support will be stronger. I want to encourage you by telling you that on Friday I was at the Israeli Embassy's 77th Independence Day celebration in Oslo, and I was happy to see that the deputy ambassador, the charge d'affaires, who's still here because you called back the excellent ambassador, but she's also an excellent lady, and she was able to bring together ambassadors from many nations, showing the strength of Israel in the world. There are a lot of friends of Israel around the world and in Europe, and even at the national level. So I'm happy to report that.
Thank you very much. And I know that we have impacted on governments around the world. There have been public statements made by many world leaders and members of different parliaments that was Palestinian Media Watch material that made them realize that they had been deceived, and they started becoming supporters of Israel. So we are going to continue to be relentless in getting this message out until we reach that tipping point where the whole world says, oh my God, we made a big mistake and let's get on a new track.
Well, I don't know if it means a lot, but I want to tell you, you're a winner, and your cause is a winning cause. So the last word is not said. We're going to see some great things happening. So thank you for being this clear voice, this beacon of hope and light for the Jewish people, but even for the whole world.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.